Welcome to the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast, where we speak about all things related to spirituality, soul level healing, intuitive guidance, frequencies, and much more. I'm Amy Sikarskie, licensed vocational nurse, past life hypnotherapist, master intuitive energy healer, and a clairvoyant physical channel. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Spirit School Online, where we offer courses in energy therapy, free guided meditations, courses and information around learning to connect in with your spirit guides, and much more. You can find me at amysikarskie.com and offerings at spiritschoolonline.com. Hi friends, welcome to today's episode. I am really happy to invite on my dear friend Allison, Batty-Capps, and today we're going to be talking about her spiritual journey and awakening and her wonderful new book. Welcome to the podcast, Allison.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here, and I'm just so grateful for this opportunity.
Oh, likewise. I am just feeling all the energy come in of spirit since hitting record and starting our call. I can feel all this loving energy around, and I'm just inviting our listeners to take a moment to pause and be with themselves, to feel this connection to the divine within, which is the title of Allison's book, and know that you are supported, guided, and loved. And Allison, as we get started, can you share with everybody your definition of the divine?
Well, I think the divine is deeply personal, and I think it means different things for different people. And so one of the things that I explore in my book is the idea of finding language that resonates for you, but that the divine is essentially, you're connected with it when you feel a sense of being loved and loving. You feel calm and open and expansive in your body, when there's a sense of grounding and safety and security, and there's a sense of peace. And, the divine within has many different names across cultures. And one of the things that I explore in my book is it reveals itself uniquely to each individual, depending on the needs of that soul's evolution. And so I love that you started with just acknowledging what you felt and encouraging listeners to feel that for themselves, because that really is my goal with this book, is to help others feel their unique connection to the divine within. Love, essentially, is what the divine within is.
Yes, and I feel that. And I feel like you have a wonderful, calming, loving energy about you that whenever we connect, I immediately feel peace come through. And so just want to thank you for sharing that energy with me and our listeners today as we go throughout our conversation. And so that leads me to your book where you were sharing about your experiences and those moments that weren't necessarily so peaceful. And so I would love if you could share with us how some of these significant moments shaped your life and the work that came through in your book. And you can go back as far as you would like. Where do you feel this all starts for you?
Well, it really started in childhood. I was deeply connected to the spirit world as a child. And in fact, I was raised Catholic and I wanted to be a priest when I was a little girl. And of course, in the Catholic Church, women are not allowed to be direct conduits to God. And that always felt off to me. Something about that just didn't feel right. But yet, being such an impressionable little girl, it led me to disconnect to my own connection to spirit. And so as a young child, I had imaginary friends. There were beings of light that used to surround me and guide me. I used to be able to see auras. And I remember asking my parents, these are the things that I'm experiencing. Can you help me understand what this is? And they told me, it's your imagination, it's not real. And I remember being so afraid that I shut those down. And I think many of us are deeply connected to the spirit world when we are children. And I think that is our innate That's our innate born instinct. But because of the way society is structured, we begin to disconnect from that one by one and step by step. And I kind of explore that in my book, how these are the natural traits that we're born with innately, but we begin to separate from them based on the experiences that we have with the external world.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2008, my life was kind of in chaos. I had been married to my high school sweetheart. We were in the process of separating. I had recognized some patterns within myself that were unhealthy that I wanted to break. And I decided to go, I had been a professional actor for 20 years, and I decided to go to a psychic school to learn how to do energy healing. And this to me felt like a reconnection with my true self. And in my first meditation class, I had this profound experience where I was meditating and I just felt filled with something so peaceful and so loving. And I remember being, I'm going to cry as I recall this. I remember being so held and so loved, and that they gave me a glimpse of seeing the world through their eyes. And so I began to see how much I loved everything in creation based on being able to experience my essence through this essence. And then immediately the teacher told us to ground, and they told us to connect to the earth. And I remember being filled with fear because to me, in my Catholic upbringing, the earth represented hell. It represented a place of suffering. It represented a place of fear. It represented a place that our innate instinct is sinful. And this was the first experience where I had this dichotomy of the beauty of the divine and also the shadow aspect of what we have created here in this plane to help us grow. And I began to have all of these mystical experiences where the ascended masters essentially were sharing with me their teachings and their life journeys through merging with me and blending their energy with me. And then I would see visions of their life, and it would feel like I had lived that life. It was really profound. But then
Mm-hmm.
I also had my childhood trauma coming to the surface, and I could see and sense the energies that exist in this plane that are unhealed. And I didn't have the tools at the time to have that discernment or to ground myself or to clear energy or to protect my essence. And so it just kind of became a state of chaos that I had to eventually learn how to unpack.
Wow, that sounds like a lot
Yeah,
to experience without a framework or a friend or a mentor that could, I'm hearing in my head diagnose. So I guess we're
yeah,
going in a new direction here. But to accurately, potentially, I would say from a spiritual perspective, diagnose what's happening to
yeah,
give you those tools to work through and with the experiences and understand them deeply,
yeah,
and it's in coming more from a place of empowerment and love.
yeah,
And of course, I'm speaking to the next phases of what happens in your
yeah,
book. So if you want to lead us
yeah,
forward in time
yeah.
to another significant moment.
Yeah. Well, diagnose is the perfect word, right? I think so often there's a belief system in Western society that spirituality is somehow not real, and that when we're
Mm.
having these mystical experiences, they are hallucinations or they are delusions. And from a perspective of my lived experience, I do have a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, which is a combination of a mood disorder and schizophrenia. And I do have a diagnosis of complex PTSD because I do have a complex trauma history. So the experiences that I had certainly did meet criteria. And I do talk about this in my book that I was disorganized. I was
Mm.
struggling to communicate what I was experiencing. And so from that framework, yeah, I met criteria for a diagnosis in the Western medical lens. However, there was a mystical nature to this, and there was a trauma nature to this that I was being told wasn't real.
Mm.
that it wasn't true that I had a trauma history, that that was part of my delusions, and that it isn't true that people can have psychic or mystical experiences. So I began to fear my own experiences, and that led me to enter a really dark night of the soul where I kept being re-traumatized because of these experiences, and I was
Yeah.
hospitalized. And I actually had an experience where I wanted to give up, where I
Mm.
thought, I can't live this way anymore. This isn't sustainable. I can't work. I can't function. Um, there isn't meaning. No one's teaching me tools how to manage this experience. The medication works sometimes and it doesn't work other times. And so I decided I was going to end my life.
Mm.
And I took all of the medicine in my medicine cabinet and I went to sleep. And before I went to sleep, I set the intention. And I was raised Catholic, so suicide is a sin in the Catholic Church. However, I have a deep connection to what I call God. And so I said, I'm really sorry for what I'm about to do, but I cannot handle being here on earth anymore. I need to come home. And that night I had a dream. I had a dream that I stood before God and the angels, and they said to me, it is not your time. There is something really important that you came to earth to do. And we know that you're struggling, but we have been guiding you to remember how to heal so that you can help others. And if you go back, we will continue to guide you towards healing and integration and wholeness so that you can remember the divine within. And they gave me the choice. They said, you can come home tonight or you can go back. And I apparently chose to come back because I woke up in the morning and decided I needed to change my life, that I needed to stop pretending that there wasn't meaning in these experiences, and instead I needed to seek the meaning. So I started studying shamanism and Reiki and Buddhism and Hinduism and energy healing. And I started to develop belief systems and frameworks that made my experiences make sense. And then I became a licensed therapist and studied depth psychology and understood the impact of trauma. And what I began to recognize is I was having post-traumatic stress flashbacks where the young parts of myself, my inner children that had experienced the trauma, were merging with me. And I was experiencing the world through those neural pathways.
Mm.
And at the same time, I was connecting to mystical experiences where my mediumship abilities, my psychic abilities, and my deep connection to the spirit world were being revealed to me so that I could remember the truth of what we all are. But they were intermixed.
Mm.
And so that's why I was disoriented. It was because my trauma and my mystical experiences were merging. And I didn't have the ability at the time to discern. But as I studied shamanism, as I studied Reiki, as I studied psychology, as I studied Buddhism and mindfulness and meditation and yoga, I developed the tools. And all of a sudden, these experiences that had been scary and overwhelming began to no longer have that effect on me. And instead, I was able to always recognize, oh my God, that's my inner child, or that's my inner critic, or that's my guide, Yeshua, or that's my guide, Mary. And I was able to kind of begin to take a deep separation. And I call that the inner compass. It's the aspect of us that is whole and complete and divine and can never be harmed and is pure consciousness. It doesn't have an identity. It doesn't have an ego. It just exists as peace and love. And it is the natural caretaker of our humanness, of these parts of ourselves that have our gifts and our talents and our belief systems and our wounds. And the job of the inner compass is to listen to all of those other parts of ourselves and navigate how to show up as a divine human being, honoring the diverse ways that we express ourselves, right? That there isn't that it's better to be divine than it is to be human. It's that we're meant to be both, that we're meant to embody that uniqueness, because that is the beauty of the divine, is it takes many forms. It is all of existence. And we come here specifically to forget that truth. You know?
Yes. And it reminds me of the awakening experience for many where we feel so much love and
Yeah.
it's like, oh my gosh, what is this happening? You know, it was hard to even put into words. We often do forget about the physical body, the physical reality, those parts of ourself, the importance of being here. I feel like saying, playing the game, like being in the role. You know, you talked about
Yeah.
acting class, and sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like each life we're playing a part, we're playing a role, and it can be very disorganizing if we don't recognize all aspects of our truth, our reality, and how to merge and integrate with the body and with spirituality. And I know there
That's right.
are many modalities that focus on either or bringing them together.
Yeah.
And how has that played a role in your ascension path, your healing, your embodiment? How have those moments assisted you?
Well, it's really interesting that you bring up the idea of different paths. I mean, that's one of the things I explore in my book is everybody has their own need of what path to follow. Some might need a strictly spiritual path. Some might need a strictly scientific path. Some might need a strictly psychological path. That we're all at different places on our healing journey, but eventually they all lead home, which is the integration of all of them. It is the ability to have a deeply personal spiritual practice, which I premise in my book begins with the practice of mindfulness, the ability to go inward and listen and be still,
Mm-hmm.
with the ability to reparent ourselves, right? That's the psychological piece. Like how do we love the parts of ourselves that cause us harm, right?
Yeah.
That engage in the world through protective means that not they're not always helpful, right? And from a biological perspective, the body is its own entity that requires these other tools to be fully functioning, that the brain and the nervous system will not learn to be in that state of peace or that state of compassion if we are not practicing mindfulness and self-love. So eventually, I think all paths lead to an integrative path where we're pulling these different traditions, whether it be a science tradition or a spiritual tradition or a psychological perspective, to return to that wholeness. And I call this process the hero's journey, right? That we're all
Right.
heroes on this journey of remembering, and the process of facing the shadow aspects of ourselves, the darkness within us, and accepting, oh, wow, I
Mm-hmm.
am capable of causing harm. And I didn't realize that this people pleasing and this caretaking actually takes away the agency of the other person I'm engaging with. And that means I'm causing them harm, even though it comes from a place of love and protection where I want to keep them safe. I'm actually harming them because I'm making them feel like they're not capable.
Mm. That's a big
Right?
one. That's a big one, especially for healers or
Yeah,
empaths, sensitives who feel another's pain and want to
yeah,
help and step
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Throughout the process of receiving the diagnosis and then going on your hero's journey, you've explained a little bit about the importance of following our inner compass. Can you talk about some of these discoveries and like an overall view of this new way of thinking or proceeding, how you're integrating all these different traditions with your therapeutic background? If you could just share a little, I'm really fascinated.
Well, the first thing I'm hearing is Spirit wants me to acknowledge that I have stepped into a role with my direct connection to Source. I have set the intention that I want to embody Source in the human experience, and that I want to be as Yeshua was, that I want to be a pure vessel of that love. And so I have a regular practice where I work with myself on a daily basis to embody that truth and to work with the parts of myself that could be confused by the potential power that could come from that type of connection, to really stay in that humility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I am very intentional when I sit with others to channel source and to be that vessel to help them feel that within themselves. So that is the first intention that I set with every client, regardless of their belief system, is I'm just going to hold that presence and be that love that they may never have experienced in their life, or that they may have forgotten that they were connected to.
Yeah.
And then I ask their team and their oversoul or their higher self to guide me in guiding them. So I listen for questions or interventions that would be helpful. And so I hear like, it doesn't really feel like hearing. It feels like I just am speaking from their oversoul, that their oversoul merges with me, and all of a sudden I'm asking them questions, and they're starting to have experiences, and
Yeah.
they're starting to tap into their own inner world.
Right.
And then what ends
Yes.
up happening with every client at some point is they start feeling their direct connection to their oversoul and their team. And so they start seeing their inner child. They start seeing their inner critic. They start seeing their higher self, or feeling that love and connection. They start seeing the spirit team that's there. And rather than me telling them what I see, which is a perfectly valid way of being a channel, and I think it's needed for some people on their journey, I have made the decision that I don't want them to become reliant on me. I want them
Mm-hmm.
to trust their own intuitive being. So they intuitively begin to develop their psychic gifts. They begin to hear and see and feel and sense, and they begin to get direct messages from their team. This is important for you to learn shielding, or it is important for you to learn how to ground, or it is important for you to release this belief system, or it is important for you to reparent this younger part of yourself, or this soul fragment is stuck in this other lifetime and we think it would be helpful for you to bring it home. So I
Yeah.
become a facilitator, a conduit that I didn't understand what I was doing for many years. In fact, I remember one time I was channeling and I had the thought, I am channeling God. And then I had the thought, that's not possible. There's no way to channel God. That's too high a frequency. And there became this like conflict within myself of like, is it possible to have a direct, a direct line to source? And through working with you and working through my other mentors, Robin Benelli and Colleen Benelli, I have come to see that it isn't unrealistic, that others have seen that I have a direct connection, and that it's safe to say anyone can have that direct connection. You just have to set the intention for that direct connection, and you have to practice connecting. And so my book is really an entry level way of connecting in, but it's step by step with basic mindfulness, because I
Mm-hmm.
think I don't want people to experience the overwhelm that I experienced. I want, if I can prevent people from going through a spiritual emergency,
Right.
I'd like to prevent them from going through, spiritual psychosis. And so I've tried to structure my book in a way that is like rudimentary mindfulness. And then eventually we get to meeting your higher self, meeting your spirit team, meeting source.
I really love your structure and how you hold this space. And I had a session with you that was so beautiful. And it was very special. It was very unique because of your blend of background.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I felt like not only did I experience the therapist, like the training and the way that you were holding space, but to that, in a more spiritual, expansive way, the way you were connecting in with spirit,
Yeah.
holding that space, channeling the divine, and asking, really reflecting to me these questions that had me going deeper. I felt like I was already like on the precipice. I knew I could feel the next step, but the specifics and the particular questioning, that's kind of what was missing. So it helped me refine.
I'm
And
glad that you felt that way.
yeah, it was wonderful. It really, really was. And the energy throughout, just like when we got on today, I can feel the stuff of, I want to call it like the entourage of light, like a
Yeah.
source, but all the angels, all the guides, ascended masters coming through. And one other thing about energy work and therapy in general is the importance of being heard. And you allow that in your sessions when you would ask me questions, and then it's like I would hear myself speaking it. So there was the witness of me, the witness of you, the reflection back. And it was really a beautiful experience that helped me to ground it,
Yeah.
and the vocalization to bring it into this reality, but then all of my being feel it and hear it. You've mentioned some of your trainings in shamanism and Reiki. What's your perspective, and how do you blend Reiki with the work that you do? How would you define that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm trained in internal family systems theory, which I think Richard Schwartz was essentially tapping into shamanistic
Mm,
techniques and energy work because you essentially, when you're working with parts, you use the elements to help them unburden, right? So I merge internal family systems therapy with Reiki, where I am facilitating Reiki by channeling Reiki or channeling the ascended masters or channeling the archangels so that the clients can sense that energy, but I don't always say that that's what I'm doing because not all
mhm,
clients believe in energy work. So I use the framework of internal family systems to help them identify the part of themselves that is holding the energy that is stuck or the energy that is denser.
mm.
And they can see it usually as like a cloud, or they might have an image of a monster, or they might have the image of something that
Yeah.
represents the wound. And then I will ask them to ask the energy, do you want to use air, water, earth, fire, or light to unburden it? So I then ask Reiki or the Ascended Masters or the Archangels to clear it with whatever
Okay.
element they're using. And then the client is just setting the intention. I want to use fire or I want to use light. And they can see the energy pixelate and they can see it return to source, but they don't always have the understanding or the belief system that that's what's happening. But I know that's what's happening. And so
Okay,
that's one of
yes.
the things that was really important to me with this work is not everybody shares a belief system in energy healing, and not everybody
Right.
shares a belief system in the spirit world. So, how do we help those that don't want to experience those truths still experience the benefit of that way of working? And so, this is one of the ways that I have found to do that is by merging psychology and depth psychology. They call it active imagination, where you can talk to the archetypes, right? So my clients, I've worked with atheists and I will ask them, what are you sensing around you? And they'll say, well, something calling itself Archangel Michael is here. And I'll say, oh, that's an archetype. That's an archetype of strength. And it's an archetype. And I'll stay within their belief system, but they're literally tapping into what I call the divine within, which is the spirit world. And I explore that in my book, how, there's many belief systems out there, and it doesn't matter which framework you use or what you believe. What matters to me is, do you find it helpful? Like, is it helpful
Right.
when you tap into this? And how does your body feel? And how does your essence feel? And if you feel lighter and you feel more connected to yourself, then keep experimenting with it and call it whatever you want to call it. you
Yes.
know?
Yes, absolutely. And you brought up a couple of things here that leads me to the question about the trauma-informed Reiki practice. And what does that mean to you? Can you
Yeah.
explain some of the signs of
Yeah.
a trauma response? Or, yeah, I'll just let you
Yeah.
flow with.
Yeah, it's a really good question because I think my teachers originally at the psychic school were not trauma informed. So
Mm,
they just assumed that I knew about my trauma history. And they
okay.
assumed that I was going to the psychic school because I was ready to release that. But my unconscious had suppressed those memories so far that I had no context. So when they started telling me, well, you have a family member who is literally attached energetically to your abdomen, controlling you,
Hmm.
I just was filled with fear because I was like, how can that be? And I didn't, and then the trauma just surfaced. So I think it's important for us as energy workers to understand that when we are sensing something in a client, they might not yet have awareness of that.
Hmm.
And what
Yeah.
might happen if we clear it or we remove it is it may surface. And they may begin having access to the memories or the unconscious belief systems or the body
Hmm.
sensations. So you can recognize that when you're sitting with a client because they'll start to have an emotional release.
Right.
Or you might feel their body tense, or you might notice that they start raising their shoulders, or they start getting defensive, or they start acting younger or different than they were. And this is all an indication that a neural pathway has been triggered from a younger experience that was more traumatic in nature. Now,
Okay.
most people that seek energy work have usually done enough of their own work that they can handle energy work, or they have enough of a belief system in energy work that they can be with what comes up. But I think it is still important for us to consider that a lot can surface when we start removing and clearing dense energy. And I have even found with clients that sometimes the dense energy comes back because the system is so uncomfortable with the change that
Hmm.
they don't feel safe anymore. And it brings up a whole level of like discomfort. And so they call the wounds back. And so I think it is also important for us to, I don't know, not all of us can be trained in every modality, but at least have a basic understanding of psychological theories and neuroscience to understand what might be happening in the people that we're working with. And I
Hmm.
do hope to eventually train healers in working in a more integrative way like I do so that they can have at least that framework of understanding.
Right.
I think that there's value and need for pure energy work, just like there's value and need for pure psychological work. But I really think we're heading towards a time in society where we need to be merging instead of separating out science and spirituality. We need to start bringing them together because they really do support each other. And I explore this in my book is we are biologically predisposed to have mystical experiences. That is
Mhm.
what the neuroscience is showing, is that the brain is literally structured to have these experiences. And the science cannot yet show whether or not we are creating it or
Mm.
perceiving it.
Okay. Yes, that is the question.
And that is the profound question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what if it's
Wow.
both? What if it is both perceiving it and creating it, right?
Right. And being open to the experience and what comes from that experience.
Yeah,
The healing, the
yeah.
messages, the guidance. Yes, all. Do you have any advice for Reiki practitioners that might have a client in person and you kind of described like how the body would shift and feel? What advice do you have for them and how to best support a client that is going through an experience where trauma is releasing?
I think it is important for us to recognize that they might need additional support. So if we are
Mhm.
sensing something, in our psychic senses that may indicate that trauma was there, or if we're seeing some sort of body response or emotional response that is, you know, it's normal to have releases, but if it feels intense, we should recommend that they seek out additional support,
Mm-hmm.
because we're sensing that there's a lot that's going to be clearing in the next two to however long we're sensing it might take to clear, so that they can
Right.
have that support system. And then I think as Reiki practitioners, we understand inner child work,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We understand shadow work a little bit. We understand soul retrieval,
Yes.
right? So if we can remember that healing isn't just about what happens on the energetic level, it's also about what happens internally, that we need to give ourselves what we never had. So you can clear something energetically, but if you don't start loving yourself in the way that you weren't loved,
Mm-hmm.
the wound doesn't ever fully heal.
Right. Right.
Right? From a biological perspective, right? The brain, the nervous system won't fully heal unless those new neural pathways get created and the nervous system learns to stay regulated. So as Reiki practitioners, we can invite in that type of practice by reminding the client to nourish themselves, to do energy clearing daily, to do self-care practices that are self-loving, such as yoga or listening to music or moving or creating art, by speaking lovingly to ourselves. And so these are things that are within our scope of practice as energy workers, right? We're kind of like coaches in a way.
Yeah.
And so we could say, build your own spiritual practice. And that would be something that could help create the new neural pathways.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. The aftercare is so important. And it is a benefit to being connected to spirit to also channel in what spirit recommends for them,
Yeah,
and also knowing when it's like appropriate and really supportive to say, okay, I feel like this other form of therapy or modality would
yeah,
support you.
yeah,
And to I think this message is coming in for new Reiki practitioners that might feel a sense of responsibility or pressure of having like a perfect session, whatever that in their mind looks
yeah,
to be, and that everything can be healed in one session.
yeah,
And it's real important to say that's not how it works. We don't want to
yeah.
skip to the end. It's all about the experience and being present and being and
That's right.
feeling. And so there is the integration period. There can be many weeks or months.
Yeah,
And when your clients come to you, it's an honor to be in that space to support them and hold the space and reflect back
yeah,
the experience, and then also to share, okay, from what I'm sensing, you could consider this other form of aftercare or
yeah.
continuing in the healing process. So yes, I think you have a lot that you share with the world and with the launch of your book, and also we'll get into a couple other things. But I really do feel when the time presents itself that training to blend your different therapeutic
Yeah.
approaches is going to be profoundly supportive and really beautiful. So when you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, that feels really good. That
Well, and I
feels
think
really
you raised
good.
such a beautiful point, right? That healing it isn't linear,
Right.
and there isn't a destination.
Hmm.
That it is an ongoing process that takes a lifetime or multiple lifetimes, depending on your belief system, right? And so I think it is really important for us as practitioners to have that awareness of, it isn't my job to save this person or solve this problem for them. It's to connect them to the information so that
Hmm.
they can continue their journey of healing and integration, right? We're
Mm.
facilitators. We are doing the healing for sure because we're
Yeah.
manipulating the energy and helping. But if the client doesn't pick up the mantle,
Right.
if they don't then say, I'm going to integrate this and heal it, nothing changes. I'm a perfect example of that. The first 5 or 6 years of my healing journey, I couldn't put into practice and I wasn't putting into practice what I was talking about in therapy or even the spiritual people that I did see at that time. I couldn't integrate it. So nothing was changing.
What helped you move through that? How?
It was the conscious realization of the patterns within me.
Okay.
It was the connection to the energy and the belief system, right? It was, okay, that energy just left. And the belief system underneath it was, I was unlovable.
Mm,
And the behavior that happens in response to feeling unlovable is prioritizing others before myself and trying to save the world, right? Do I still
mm,
believe that I'm here to help save humanity? I do. I'm one of many people here that have set forth with that mission to help humanity evolve so that we can create peace on earth. I still know that that's a truth, but
uh-huh.
I no longer believe it's my job alone.
Oh,
Right.
but
And so I'm
oh my
no
goodness.
longer engaging in toxic like helping others in a toxic way. I'm recognizing I got to be in a healthy space if I'm going to show up for others. And
Yes,
so
because oh man, that's a big burden to bear,
I know. And that
And
was the belief system, when Yeshua shared with me Yeshua's life, that was what came up in me is I'm here to finish what Yeshua started, right?
mm,
I'm here to pick up the mantle where he left off, and I'm here to start doing what he did. And I felt solely responsible for that because I didn't have community yet.
right.
I didn't know that there were other people out there doing what I was doing and believing what I was believing. So I literally thought, and this was the delusion, right? This is
Mm.
how it becomes unhealthy is I thought, oh, I have to save humanity.
And when you have that deep mystical experience without a framework
Yeah,
and an other to talk it through and an other who has seen similar experiences in people,
that's
that
right.
would be very confusing and
Yeah,
overwhelming. I mean, I guess if you work through the confusion because then you have the belief, but then it's like,
yeah,
whoa, hold on, that's a lot of pressure, a
yeah.
lot of responsibility.
And that's what it felt like, right? I mean, I remember having meditations where I was hearing people's prayers and
Okay.
I was merged with source. And so I was hearing people's prayers come in and I was merged with source. So I was part of the process of sending the energy out to them so that their prayers would be granted. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember being, I can't be responsible for that. Why am I seeing this? I can't be God. Like, that's too much pressure for one being to be. And then finally, Source showed me that it isn't one being,
Mm.
it's one energy. And there are literally light beams coming from that one energy that fragment out to
Yeah.
everything in existence. So everything has a direct conduit to source. So we're essentially granting our own prayers.
Oh, I love, wow. I love that realization. Yeah, that perspective. I feel that. So then it was that you were within that energetic field, you were within that energy and you were experiencing the conversations and the flow and
Yeah,
like immersed in it all
yeah,
as a witness, but also a participant.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Wow.
And it was profound. I mean, this is part of the reason why I feel so passionate about this book and why I wanted to put this information out there is because Spirit has shown me how interconnected we all are and how we
Mm-hmm.
cannot exist without one another and that we literally create together, that we are literally creating all of existence by the individual belief systems and choices that we make,
Right.
that it
Right.
ripples out. And that's why I called the book Healing Ourselves to Heal the World, because if you're creating from a wound, you're creating hell for yourself or others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants to experience hell.
Right.
Right? It's
Right.
not a literal place that you go to be punished. It's a state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's a very miserable place to be.
It's a miserable place to be.
Very miserable, very lonely, very, very
Very
low and
lonely.
heavy. Yeah. So as you were sharing that and speaking about how there's a connection to source and all being one, I was just feeling the overwhelm of compassion. And I too have had visions in the past. When my team speaks to me, then they'll put a vision with it of people that are lowly or struggling or feel alone, and holding a place even within the prayer space, within meditation for them, letting them know they're not alone. And
That's
and
right.
that light that comes around can give a boost of hope, like the
That's right.
spiritual connection. And that is one of the most divine practices as a light worker. We'll just say
Yeah.
light worker
Yeah. Yeah.
here on earth, to feel that. And so prayers are so powerful. Um, and at the same time, they're very intermingled with religion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some religion, like I know in my religion where I was brought up, some prayers are almost verbatim every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I personally get like a funny feeling about it. It's uncomfortable to me because I sense within some of these prayers by whoever is speaking them, not always, but sometimes, that is just going through the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There's not the connection.
yes, I was gonna say there's not the
Yeah.
connection. It's a mental space intention that I'm doing, quote, what's right, but like the heart isn't fully in it. Or
Yeah.
if it is, it's so scripted that
Yeah.
it feels like that connection is governed and gatekept. And it's like putting a cap or a filter
Yeah.
over the truest connection to source.
Yeah.
I'm curious about like did you have anything when it came to, I don't even know the word, healing, integrating, just like with these spiritual practices that are so
Yeah.
intermingled with a structured religion, and then
Yeah.
coming into meeting, the divine within it and the God, source consciousness, and having your own mystical experience. Could you
Yeah,
share?
in fact, I've had several mystical experiences around this theme that I've had to work through. So when I first awakened to the energy, I was walking around Chicago and people were coming up to me and they were asking me spiritual questions about how to embody the divine. Like they were asking me questions like I was already a master teacher. And I was like looking at
Wow.
them like, I have no idea why you're talking to me like this. Like this is freaking me out. And then at one point, I was in treatment and I walked up to a group of people and they said, we were just discussing you. We were trying
Oh,
to figure out what religion you're going to create in this lifetime. And I was filled with fear because I have
wow.
studied religion and I have seen how religions justify oppression, genocide, and
Yeah.
harm. And I did not want to participate in that. And so part of my dark night of the soul was rejecting God because
Mm-hmm.
I was taught that God punishes. I was taught that God judges. I was taught that there are good human beings and bad human beings, right? Which was so different from my lived experience, which told me everything is loved unconditionally because everything is made in the image of source. Everything is source. Nothing is separate from source. Everything is source. It's just in the form it's taken to understand itself.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I had to heal and develop my own practice, right? So do I still sometimes do my Catholic prayers? Yes, but only because I have now studied the original Aramaic.
Oh, wow. And I just got
And the
chills.
original Aramaic is very different than the Christian interpretation and translation. It's actually a false translation, right? The Lord's Prayer says, Our Father who art in heaven. The original text says, O birther of all creation.
Oh, and see, when you say the original transcript, like, yeah, meaning, I just got chills through my whole body. I
Yeah,
can feel, I can feel the difference.
yeah.
And you're right, like it's not even the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same. And so for me, I had to really work through that. That was part of my healing journey is I had to come to a place where I recognized that there are wounds in spiritual traditions. And I talk
Mm-hmm.
about this in my book that we as followers or seeker of the divine have got to develop discernment. And anytime you, like, there is beauty in these teachings. Like, there's beauty in Christianity, there's beauty in Hinduism, there's beauty in Buddhism, there's beauty in all of the traditions, but there are also wounds. So as seekers out there, we have to discern, does this cause harm to self or other?
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Right.
the core teaching is love thy neighbor as thyself, do no harm, right? If that's the core teaching, then any teaching that says harm somebody, oppress somebody, judge somebody, that is a false teaching. That
Right.
is a wound that got placed in because of the culture or society of the time, and it somehow served the purpose of either those creating the religion or
Mm-hmm.
those in power. Right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting passionate about this right now because I think, spiritual abuse is real.
Yes.
It is a
Yes.
real topic, and we're not even aware of it because we've been indoctrinated into these ways of being and we just believe it as truth. And I teach in my book that nothing is absolute truth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything should be questioned, including your connection to source.
And is that the section on the inner compass? I'm thinking
It
back.
is partially through the
Mm-hmm.
section on the inner compass. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
feeling it.
Yeah.
And in what ways, because your book is so well laid out, what would readers discover and how can it support them? What type of reader is your book best suited for?
Well, I tried to write towards a general audience so it would be accessible to all belief systems. And the framework of the book is the hero's journey. And part one of the hero's journey is initiation. So it is introducing you to new ideas that are outside your current belief systems. So part one is structured to introduce you to the commonalities in several world religions and spiritual practices so that you can see that there are many paths to the inner compass. You have to find the one that's right for you. And here's what the commonalities are. And then I break down psychology and what the commonalities are within psychology through several healing modalities. And I argue again, the importance is developing self-awareness through mindfulness to be able to recognize the parts of yourself that hold wounds so that you can heal them. And I call those roadblocks. So part
Mm-hmm.
one is designed to just give you the framework of what the inner compass is, what roadblocks are, and what the collective divine is through the exploration of spirituality, neuroscience, and psychology, with the final chapter being the focus on metta, or the practice of loving kindness, as the key to embodying the inner compass. So what happens when you practice loving kindness is the frontal lobe, which is responsible for emotion regulation, empathy, compassion, adult perspective, and collaboration, lights up. And the
Mm-hmm.
amygdala, which is responsible for the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, shrinks.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability in trauma or stress for the frontal lobe to interrupt the amygdala increases the more you engage in loving kindness. So I argue, even though this is your innate ability, if you practice this on a regular basis, humanity would evolve. Like we would
Yeah.
evolve as a species if we prioritize this way of being.
Mm-hmm.
Then part two is focused on identifying roadblocks. So I explore through psychological theories, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and developmental, how the brain develops from childhood, what the innate traits are of the inner compass and how those are innate in you in childhood. But the experiences you have lead you to either embrace them or separate from them.
Okay.
And that's how your wounds form. And it helps you to begin to connect to those parts of yourself through some practices of witnessing the witnessing your inner child and your inner critic and getting to know them and reparent them. And then
Mm-hmm.
part 3 is focused on the collective divine. So it includes channeled messages that my clients and I have received from our work with spirit. It includes some exercises of how to connect directly to your own spirit team and to source. And so it's kind of like a step-by-step guide of getting to a direct connection to source, starting with basic mindfulness and basic understanding of the concepts, all the way up to psychic abilities.
And there we are.
And there we are.
There we are. Wow, so beautiful. And as you're sharing about your book, I am aware and remember that you also have other resources. So when people are
Yeah.
reading through your book, you have accessible messages through Spotify meditations, and also I believe it was a YouTube I've seen you on. Can you share a little bit
Yeah.
about that support that comes with your book?
Yeah, so there are 36 meditations and guided practices in the book, and those are available in recorded messages where I channel source. So when you listen to the recordings, you are getting an energy healing because I'm channeling the energy, but you're also building your muscle to develop the skill of mindfulness and
Mm-hmm.
inner awareness and psychic abilities. So it's kind of like a twofold benefit if you do the book in its entirety. Is it's not really meant to just be read, it's meant to be experiential so
Okay.
that you actually experience the concepts in the book through the practices that are
Yes.
available on YouTube or Spotify or my websites. And then I have other, resources available too. There's an online course that I hope to have live by the end of November that supplements the book. Where people will mentor with me, and there's additional exercises and additional teachings, but it structures it. I read each chapter of the book while channeling, so you're getting an even more of an energy healing and connection because I'm channeling the entire time I'm reading the book. And then there are additional guided practices, and then there's a mentorship program where we'll meet once a month, maybe twice a month as a group, and we'll talk about what you're discovering. Because I think having community to talk about, what you experience when you tap into mystical experiences is so important because it
Yes.
can be so confusing and so disorienting if you
Yes.
don't have, a safe space to explore these ideas. And then I also post other videos and informational things on social media and YouTube and stuff. So,
So beautiful. I love
yeah.
all the support that and avenues that you are making available for others. And I'm just feeling all of this comfort and love come in. And
Oh,
we've
thanks.
talked, yeah, we've talked a lot about the hero's journey and your path to healing and awakening and pulling together, like if you look back on your experiences and all of the modalities, what supported you and what you feel, supports others in session. If you could define healing, like how would you
That's
define
such a big question.
what are we all like looking towards, and it's when I just feel like separated or disconnected,
Yeah,
and that happening through trauma. So
yeah. I
share
think
with me.
it's self-awareness, right? It's like healing happens when we understand ourselves and we
Mm.
accept all of who we are.
Oh, that's big.
And
Yeah.
then we love ourselves as we are. And that doesn't mean that we don't try to change or shift if we're doing things that cause ourselves harm. But it
Mhm.
means before you can make a shift in your life, you've got to first acknowledge what you're doing and you've got to love it. And
Yeah.
you've got to see the protective reason behind it, you know, that there
Right.
is always a protective reason behind every behavior, including those that cause immense harm.
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to have that amount of compassion, right? To recognize, wow, that behavior is so toxic and so harmful. And it is an indication that the person is completely disconnected from who they are. They're in so
Yeah.
much pain that they think the only way to feel better is to harm someone.
Mm-hmm. And so when that comes up in our reality, if we're, you know, in the healing space and processing it, you mentioned the compassion, and that's what I was feeling, the compassion, the love, the forgiveness, and then the accountability to do better.
That's right. And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you allow people to treat you unkindly. It means you have enough self-respect and self-love to say, I will not tolerate this behavior, but I
Mm-hmm.
also recognize you're engaging in this behavior because you're hurting. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to harm you in response to being harmed. I'm going to offer a compassionate boundary. I'm going to step away. Right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the most powerful teachings, I think, in Yeshua's teachings is, I think sometimes we think we have to be selfless,
I
and that
see.
isn't actually what he taught. Help someone and offer to help them a second time. And if they don't accept it, walk away. That's the teaching.
Mm, that feels, yeah, that feels really good, because that would just solve so many challenges for
Yeah,
those who are feeling the burdens and
yeah.
taking on the weight of others. And we really can't.
We can't.
Yeah, we're in charge of and responsible for how we show up in life. And
That's
that
right.
starts with ourselves. And
That's
so
right.
when we're talking about the healing and seeing it in others and then feeling it within ourselves, what are some of the most like profound experiences, or how has that touched you personally in your life getting through the challenges?
My relationships have deepened so much. Like I find such deep connection now. When conflict arises with someone that I love, we get curious about each other.
Mm,
We try to understand what's at the root of it. What is the underlying need? What is the underlying boundary? We listen to one another. And
mm-hmm.
then we try to figure out, okay, how can we meet in the middle?
Yeah.
We collaborate, and this is how we heal the world. We don't heal the world by forcing our beliefs on others. We heal the world by trying to understand each other's perspectives and
Mm-hmm.
trying to find a common ground and recognize when somebody is engaging from a wound, it's too painful for them to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where I feel the love come in, the compassion, the Reiki, you know, the
Yeah,
source energy, and that
yeah,
connection to the divine within, holding
yeah.
that space. Wow, your book is amazing. It has so
Oh,
much to share and such a like beautiful pathway. And I love how it connects so many dots and pulls in so many pieces while keeping it open to all, like you mentioned, all belief systems. Yes. So if others would like to work with you, what type of offerings do you have? And can you share your website, how they can
yeah.
connect?
So my website is blossomingheartwellness.com. Like the heart is blossoming open,
Mm,
so that's the website. And I'm in the process of creating online content as I'm working towards getting a visa to work in Spain. So I live in Spain. I'm from America, but I live in Spain. And so I probably won't be able to see clients one-on-one until September of 26. But you can work with me through the online course, and you can sign up for my website and you can see my online content as a starting point. But my one-on-one work will be probably more towards September. And I just want to acknowledge that this book was not written by me.
mm,
This book was written by you. I heeded a call to gather information in a way that would resonate to a vast, open understanding that was accepting of lots of beliefs, right? So I don't feel that I wrote this book. I feel like this book was channeled because the world wanted this information in this way. So I actually have to say thank you to all of the listeners for trusting me to gather this information in a way that I hope helps you connect to this truth within yourself.
I just have the biggest smile in my heart. And I just thank you. That feels so beautiful. And I feel like when you're sharing your words, I felt this massive feeling of hope and joy and like, the humility and the gratitude. But then it's like this light, and it's like, yes, your book is here to support others where they are, to answer a call that
Yeah.
maybe they didn't know they were
Yeah.
looking, they were didn't really realize they were calling for, but when they do feel to connect and to access your book and the information, then all of these answers are going to be there for them, and this inspiration, and truly the answers are really the pathway to
That's right.
connect with the information. Thank you so, so much for coming on to the podcast
Thank you.
today. And I do want to share, I do believe that by the time this is out, the book will be available. Can you share with everybody the release date? And
Yeah.
do you have a special platform where they could go to order the book?
So it is available for purchase now. If it's before November 4th, if it's November 4th, that's when it's available to receive. So November 4th, 2025. And I think right now it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'm currently trying to reach out to local independent bookstores to get them to carry it, and libraries. But if you're interested, go to your local library, tell them that you really want to read this book, and tell them the name of it. It's The Divine Within: Healing Ourselves to Heal the World. I did receive a really good Kirkus review, which is the gold standard for books. And so I'm hoping that that will help get it out into more bookstores. I know some people are trying to avoid shopping at Amazon, and I really want to honor where people are at. So you also can order the ebook directly from me on my website. So if you're an ebook reader, you can get it directly from me. But if you're wanting a hard copy, you'll either have to go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble right now.
Okay, beautiful. Oh, and congrats. I know when you shared that information last week, I was so excited for you.
Thanks.
So amazing. And big heartfelt thanks for coming on today and
Yeah.
sharing your light with everyone.
Mm. Thank you so much. I'm sending everybody so much love and appreciation. And I just want to remind you, don't rush. It's okay to be exactly where you are. Know that you are deeply loved, that you are deeply accepted, and that you are worthy of being who you are. Don't be afraid to find your path to healing. It can be scary, but it will be well worth it.
Indeed, yes. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast. If you would please share with a friend, leave a 5-star or a review, those are always graciously welcomed. So thank you so much, beautiful. We'll see you again on the next episode.